What am I hearing in the background?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Convergence Coaching HR Huddle. My name is Renee Moelders. I'm a partner with Convergence Coaching, and I'm here with Samantha Mansfield, Senior Consultant. And I was hearing a little bit of an echo, Sam. Hopefully that will go away. Hope that we don't still hear it. But Sam and I are excited to be here today. We are here in the place of Tamara and Jen. Both of those ladies are busy doing other things, so they asked us to sub in for them. And today we're going to be talking to you about employee monitoring software. Not really our favorite topic, but definitely a topic we have strong opinions on. And the reason this came up for us, actually it's come up in a number of ways. So first of all, we asked a question about it on our Anytime Anywhere work survey. And we did find that 8% of participating firms are using employee monitoring software. We were like, what? And you could say, well, it's only 8%, but we just sort of blew our top that even 8% of firms are doing this. We're a little concerned about that. But also we've been out at conferences this summer and we've been hearing about it. I heard about it in one of my sessions, actually, or maybe I went to someone else's session and the gentleman was talking about how he's using this software inside of his firm. And I saw such interesting replies, Samantha, from people around the room because I raised my hand and I said, hey, aren't you concerned that that might be damaging trust in your relationships with your people? And he went off and told all the reasons why he wasn't. And I was watching the reactions of people around the room and they were like, or looking at me and saying, like, I agree with you. I wouldn't do that. So we have some concerns and we wanted to talk through some of that with our audience today, our HR audience. So Sam, I think we go right into risks, because we have a lot of thoughts about risks.
Yeah, well, and if I could say something else about why I think this is such an important topic, because there's an awful lot of headlines that are still happening about return to office and how do we still make this work from home or remote working work. And I fully understand that those questions are there and people are trying to do the absolute best that they can. I think what we have to do is have open dialogue and brainstorming about what are the objectives and what is it that we're trying to wrangle that we're feeling like is still a challenge versus when we were in person. And I think those are some of the questions we need to ask before we try to get into a conversation about, well, let's just monitor people. And we're going to talk about what some of those risks are. But I think this is why this conversation is still happening so much, is they know their talent would like to stay remote. There's still so much that's happening in the headlines to bring people in. And leaders, I think, are just confused and torn on how to best lead their people.
Well, or they have some people that they feel like aren't on track, and so is the answer monitoring or is the answer something else? And we are going to talk about what we think perhaps the something else might be, but some sort of wholesale solution like monitoring. I'm so worried that it's going to make your high performers and the people who are on track irritated and upset. And then I don't know that it's the right answer for the people who are off track. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. And we did some research on it. Caroline's going to drop some of those links in the chat. And the HR experts and thought leaders don't think that's the right answer. And they say there are other ways to approach this. And so that's one of the risks, is that you're just going to upset a lot of people and maybe send some people completely off track, like even more off track than they already are.
Yeah. Well, and in the research that we did, there are multiple studies that have shown the implementation of these monitoring systems do decrease productivity. They actually saw that people were doing the opposite of what you're trying to do, which is create some sort of accountability by saying, hey, we're measuring everything you're doing, because they'll measure. These systems may measure keystrokes, it may measure eye movement, it may measure how much screen time you're having. There's multiple things that it can measure. But what multiple studies did say is that they actually saw a reduction in talent productivity when these tools were put into place. And that's why I was saying a moment ago, we got to be clear on what it is we're trying to do, right? What are we trying to solve for? And then know what the ramifications are to the different solutions.
Yeah. Well, and the research also, one of the research sources said that people are less likely to follow all the rules when you do this. So, they might say, now I'm going to break this rule and now I'm not going to follow this. It's like this overreaction to being monitored. And that's based on the study that was done by Harvard Business Review. So, I mean, this is not, fly by night. This is some really important research that was done that says it takes it in the wrong direction.
Well, and you made the comment too that one of the things that leaders are trying to figure out is for the people who are at risk or are struggling. And that's again completely fair. How do we help those individuals? But when we do a blanket response and we put that out there for everybody, one thing we say at Convergence quite frequently is one size fits one. And so when you look at what the implication is of putting this kind of tool in place for your high performers who have proven their responsibility and trustworthiness, and then we put them under this same magnifying glass, if you will, or microscope. I don't know what the best analogy is, but that you're right. What some of the studies showed is that it makes them feel very oppressed, and it actually adds to their stress because they're so conscientious of the fact that everything they're doing is being watched that it stresses them out. And goodness knows in the profession, one of the things we've been talking about is we need to reduce the stress on our team. And so it's important to be aware that it can have that kind of psychological impact.
Yeah. Well, and Samantha, I also have been thinking about this. Our profession has really been built around autonomy.
Mhm.
And, we say, come into this profession and you can make a career and you can make your own decisions about what kinds of clients you serve and where you want to take your career path. And just a lot of choice and autonomy built into what we do. And this seems so counterintuitive to that, even for those young people who are coming into the profession, because they have an expectation they're going to be able to capitalize on this too.
Mhm.
And so it just doesn't feel like it fits with that kind of promise of our profession, which has really distinguished it from other, like going into private accounting or going into governmental accounting. Those are environments of a lot more constraint and a lot more control and a lot more rules. And so that is concerning to me. I do want to be sure we talk about the fact that people do have to be managed.
Yeah.
It's just that this is not the right way to manage them. And you were talking a lot about, as we were preparing, about what could you do with that monitoring time instead? You have some thoughts on that.
Well, because what I thought was interesting is as I was reading about, again, what do these tools measure, right? These remote monitoring tools. And so it's going to give you a lot of data, which means we have to look at that data. And what my thoughts were is as a manager, as a leader, is my time better spent analyzing data like that looks at how much screen time we have for our people and how many keystrokes and what time they're logging in or screen captures we have throughout the day, all those things, right? That takes time away from leaders. And in this profession, I mean, I think in all professions, but I know specifically in accounting, leaders are so strapped for time that my thought is you're not going to go look at that data on your top performers, right? So we're going to look at the ones that we're concerned about. And would that time be better spent? Because we're already concerned about them. And there's something that's raised the flag. So is that time better spent in talking with that person instead of trying to read these data reports and try to somehow ascertain what the problem is? We're better off to build some rapport, build some trust, and figure out what is going on with this person instead of trying to look at that kind of data.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just put in the comments, invest this time in shepherds and give your shepherds time to go and meet with your people, especially the people who are off track, to check in with them, help them prioritize, get in there and try to understand why are they off track, what's happening with that. It just seems like a much smarter use of the time and more likely to create engaged people versus your example of stressed out, feeling monitored, feeling like someone's watching me all the time.
Right.
That I think would be very upsetting. And perhaps it's going to cause turnover in these organizations who are doing this. Now, maybe they're doing it surreptitiously, which I'm not sure is legal. And then the gentleman at the Engage conference who was talking about it, he's very upfront with his people. So when they're hired, he lets them know, I have this software, I'm going to be monitoring you. And he feels like transparency is enough to break down that, like that concern about trust. He feels like the trust can still be there because he's being so straight and honest. I'm not so sure I agree with that. But definitely he's not, I'm guessing, breaking any laws, because it seems like you'd have to go study all the rules in your state about what is allowed and what is not.
Yeah. And in one of the articles that Caroline put up there, it does have at least a couple of the states in what their laws are. So you're 100% right that especially as an HR role, that's something that you would probably want to own, is making sure what are the state and federal laws, because depending on the niche or the industries that you serve in with your client base, there can be some variations to those laws as well. So certainly something that you want to be aware of before making that choice. And where you mentioned the being transparent and upfront, I think that is brilliant. Because if you are going to use something, then please be transparent in it. I think a step further that you would want to go is not only saying that, hey, in the laptop I'm going to give you, there's going to be monitoring software and I'm going to monitor you. I put myself in the shoes of this new person who's coming into your organization, and I might be thinking, what are they monitoring? Right. And so I might be so conscientious of, are they monitoring if I make a mistake? Are they monitoring if I try to research? What are they monitoring? Right. So I would say also be transparent on what it is you're watching for or what creates flags. And you may be thinking, well, then what's the point of doing this? But I also believe that if we're not telling people how and why we're doing this, it really does create some of those major trust issues. And also, what's some of the studies showed is that it can make people feel a reduced level of sense of responsibility because, well, you're watching everything I'm doing. So then I guess it's not ultimately my responsibility. So I kind of do my part because you're watching everything anyway. And that is definitely not what leaders want in their talent.
No, that's so true, Samantha. Well, and also I'm sure there's going to be, if there isn't already, a way to game that system.
Yes.
And, there always is. There's always a counter to the control mechanism. And so you don't want that either. You don't want to play that kind of game with your people. Mm-mm. Instead of playing games, let's just be more transparent and straight about maybe what's not working. And that's where I thought perhaps we might want to go for a few minutes before we get out of here is, why are firms doing this? I think it's probably because we haven't clarified expectations. And it's really interesting in the anytime, anywhere work data, which, by the way, we're crunching data, we're working on writing the report. And one of the interesting findings is that people don't have good policies and guidelines in place. Firms don't, participating firms. So we ask, have you developed best practices for working remote and hybrid? Or do you have communication protocols or best practices from working from home? And those numbers really aren't that great. So there's a lot of work to be done to, when am I supposed to have my camera on? And FAQs for how to be successful working in these types of environments. So maybe that's part of the problem, is that we haven't stopped to create these guardrails and clear expectations for what do we expect of our people.
Yeah. No, I think that's 100% correct. Because I think we need to set the expectations of, is flex allowed? If we're working from a remote location, are we allowed to have flex hours? Some people, based on either experiences at another company, may infer that those two come hand in hand and you automatically get it. But maybe your firm maybe hasn't said that, and that flex time is maybe not a part of the remote work model. And so, are we clear on that? Do we have a set time that we start? I was just working with somebody and they were saying, my start time every day is 10 a.m. And great, no problem to me. But is that clear with that team, with that firm? Right. And so you're 100% right. When we go based on those assumptions of, well, but I still want us to start at 8 a.m. and I want the team all in place and working by, 8:30, they're on client work or whatever that is. Has that explicitly been agreed upon by the team? And is that operable by the team?
Right. Well, and we would say be as flexible as you can, like have as few mandates as you can possibly handle. And I realize that firms that feel like they're in the land of anything goes might feel like they have to kind of pull back towards more certainty, more control. But we would say have your people be, very open about when they're working and where they're working, and have a communication mechanism for that. And be clear on when you can reach each other and what your expectations on for response time, and then try to let go of those dictates for when and where people are working. Now, Samantha, you and I need time at, where we're on at the same time, because we have things we have to do together. We have calls we have to go to together, or projects that we're working on together. So some of it is project based and we can do it whenever we want. And other times we have to have good crossover. So, like just talking about some of that and getting clarity and mapping some of that out. Yeah, that is probably a piece of it. And then this is what I need you to produce. That's the other piece is, and you were talking about that, like people know I'm working. They may not see me, but they know I'm working because stuff comes out the end of the pipe each week. And it's clear, I produced some work, or the right amount of work. And so I'm checking those boxes. So if people don't know what those boxes are, or if we don't have a good system for like understanding what did Samantha produce this week, so we can feel good about that, then that could feel like you were in the land of uncertainty. Are people really doing what they need to?
And there are times that you do have people that are struggling and that aren't performing well in this environment. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that the lack of structure does not work for everyone. I was just this weekend, I was having that conversation with somebody who they were saying they've got a person on the team that without some structure and boundaries, the person just doesn't perform as well. And that's where let's coach that person. Let's find what makes that person successful. And some people are great planners. Some people are great organizers or time managers, but not everybody is. And so if they struggle with those things and we offer the remote, we need to coach that person to help them find the formula that makes them successful. And that's where I just go back to, I think there's so much value in let's work with the individual as opposed to, can I ascertain what's happening by looking at this data where it may or may not be getting the right impression. And so, work with people to find what is that schedule, how much structure do they need, versus how many people do really well in a very flexible, nimble environment.
Totally agree. And then we need training. I mean, we haven't even talked about that. This, like we need good training on how to work when you're working remotely and how to create that structure. And there is a learning curve around it. I found it whenever I went to working full-time remote with Convergence Coaching. I was accustomed to that office environment. So I had to create new strategies to keep myself on track. And truthfully, I get better and better at it because the more you do it, it's like anything else, you build the skills. And so having some intentional learning around that would help people probably progress along that skills path faster. And, I can't remember the exact results from the survey, the data, but I feel like also not enough firms are doing that kind of training and develop on how to work in a remote environment. So lots of opportunities there. Samantha, we could just keep going on this. I'm sure we could keep generating ideas, but I know we want to get our audience out of here. So thanks everyone for coming today and listening to us talk about monitoring software. And I think we would say, default on the side of don't do this, and instead find another way to build relationships with your people, create those guardrails that give you the comfort level, and have your people have the structure that they need. But monitoring software just is not the right answer. And hopefully you'll check out some of those links too to see that the experts say that's not the right answer either. That's not the answer to having a trusting relationship with your people that's going to have them feel engaged and motivated and giving you their very best. So thanks so much for being with us. Thank you, Samantha. And we hope you have a really great rest of your day, everyone. See you next time.